not going live, but we're just being recorded. Hi, good morning, good evening, and wherever you are in the world, I'm absolutely thrilled, silly. I'm looking forward to this over the last couple of weeks since my next guest has decided to come on board and be a guest of mine. It's a good friend of mine called Ed Soho. I met him back in 2016, I believe. Yeah, 2016. He was a mentor of mine and a colleague of mine. And I must admit, I was blown away by the stuff that came out of his mouth in terms of stories and creating trust and creating a sense of thinking slightly differently to anyone else I've ever met before, in terms of how he thinks strategically in terms of business and sales, and how he can push a story out to people, resonates with everyone. And he's got an accolade of businesses that he's worked with alongside startups and established businesses. And I know right now he's with Lenovo, which is the European way of saying it. I'm sure you were saying it a different type of way, but thank you so much today. I'm so looking this today, and tell me a little bit more about your life to date and how you've got to the point of where you are right now.
Well, Jason, thanks so much. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk again and to kind of revisit how we met. And I was always impressed with you and your partner talking about in the 2016 era around using artificial intelligence in the retail space. And I thought it was quite fascinating and really pretty much early on where AI now is standard fare. So to tell you where I am today, there's always a sort of like, how did I get to where I am? And so I usually, when I have introductory conversations with executives and when I do my keynotes, I start with where I came from. And it's not the usual path. You know, my path was very, let's say, eclectic and even to a degree Renaissance. So I grew up in Oakland, California, one of 6 boys, and basically grew up in a very challenging neighborhood with a corner grocery store owned by my father, Pete, and it was called Pete's Market. He basically gave me all of the skills that I would ever want in regards to how to handle situations, work with people, relationship building, and he had a 3rd grade education coming from China, right? So it was really quite fascinating. And it gave me sort of like the confidence and even the curiosity of always trying to get empathetic with people to really understand where they came from. Our clients were blue collar workforce. So they were manufacturing, they were in retail. 2 clubs, for lack of a better word, were also headquartered in my father's store. One club was called the Black Panthers, led by Huey Newton. And the other was the Hells Angels, led by Sonny Barger. 2 very different ends of the spectrum were customers of Pete's Market. Wow. And my dad was able to really understand how to really work with both sides of the spectrum. And that gave me a really interesting perspective. How do you work in this world today when there are different perspectives? Which camp do you belong to, or do you belong to none of them? So it gave me some impetus. And then my dad, a few years later, asked me if I wanted to take over the store. I said, no, thanks, Dad. I want to try and do something else. So I tried college for a year. I didn't really do well. I didn't have good study habits or anything like that. So I left, and then I played pool for 3 years. Every day but Christmas. One night after, one day after another. I actually ended up being an average pool player, pocket pool, in the UK region and a lot of other areas within Europe. It's snooker. I had a really hard time because I was only an average player. So one night I saw this table with no pockets, 2 white cue balls and a red ball. And I asked someone, I said, what is this game? They said, it's called 3 cushion billiards. I said, what's the objective? They said the cue ball is one of the cue balls is yours throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
The objective is for your cue ball to touch your opponent's cue ball or the red ball in either order. And before you touch the second ball, your cue ball must touch 3 or more rails. It's called 3 billiards. I'm going like, huh. Later on, I found out that there are 64 quadrillion shots on that table based on the calculations.
Yeah.
And the requirements. And so I started playing the game, and I thought it was a power game. So I'm hitting the balls as hard as I can. I'm playing in the Palace. It's a very well-known historical billiard club in San Francisco. And I'm hitting as hard as I can, counting the rails. I thought it was a power game. And this little Chinese guy, looked like Yoda, 75 years old, walks up to my table. His name is Jimmy Lee, one of the best in the world. And he goes, oh, you play bad. I said, Jimmy, this power game, right? He goes, no, not power game, brain game. You got no brain. And I said, Jimmy, he goes, let's make deal. I said, what's the deal, Jimmy? He goes, I teach you game, everything I know. I go, and? He goes, you give me a ride home, Chinatown, everything. So here's a man that didn't know me from anyone, willing to share his knowledge, his power, and his insights and expertise. And I ended up actually having a proficiency for the game. I mastered 17 systems to calculate shots. And over the course of 3 years, I ended up being number 6.
Wow.
Traveled all over the world, playing games in Paris and in Madrid and Tokyo. And I was feeling pretty good, right? And then one night I'm playing a gentleman, again, lack of a better word, named Boston Shorty. We all have nicknames, so I'll tell you mine later. And I'm playing the game. We're playing for money. And he leaves me a shot. I could not see the shot. I ran through all of my systems that I mastered and all my knowledge. I could not see the shot. Shorty goes, you don't see it, do you? I said, no. He goes, I'll teach you a new system. Stand at the foot of the table, look at the far right corner of the table, take an imaginary piece of thread, extend it 45 degrees up, 10 feet high, and extend that thread to mark a spot on the wall where the thread ends. I look at it, I go, okay. I said, I see it. He goes, you just stretched your table. You stretch outside of all the knowledge and all the physical limits of the table now. You're now virtualizing your table and all the systems that you know. Now I want you to stretch it out beyond the limits of what your constraints are. And I'm going like, oh, that's very interesting. So I looked at it, visualized it, and I extended my systems, the things that are really rock solid, right? The principles. Yeah. And lo and behold, I saw the shot. I said, Shorty, I see it. He goes, take the shot. I missed it by a hair. He walked by me, winked. He said, now I'm going to kick your butt. So here was a man that basically was my competitor, but he was so confident. He goes, I'll teach you a new system. And that system was, there is a box, the box of knowledge and insights, expertise. And it's the box we put ourselves in. There's the box that people put you in. There's the box that you stretch. So what he taught me was how to look outside of the boundaries of my perceived and sometimes put upon limits. And that helped me now see businesses differently. It helps me see relationships differently. And so there are two things out of this story. One, always listen to a guy that looks like Yoda. Two, never play shorty for money.
Yeah, of course.
So I took that, and then I took on various roles. I became a brakeman switchman for the Southern Pacific Railway. I was a machinist at Caterpillar Tractor. I was a foreman, warehouseman, truck driver. I basically worked in a tire plant. I did all those things, and somehow I got into selling computers. And it really helped me see some very interesting scenarios. With all those backgrounds, I was able to have very different conversations with clients. I wasn't talking about a product. I was talking about their business. And so in my technology career, it allowed me to have two stints at Oracle. I didn't learn the first time. And then I went to HP Unisys. I ran a data center that had 100,000 square feet of raised floor, used to be United Airlines. And I have 8 startups under my belt. And all of that has sort of prepared me to have these different conversations with different constituents, peers, partners, competitors. And I've never had more fun in my career than to take all the things that I've collected, all the things that I put in my box that allows me to stretch it and to look at the dynamics of relationships, business models, and more importantly, the ability to kind of have conversations with people at all levels.
I think that's absolutely fascinating. And I remember you telling me that story all those 4 years ago, and still resonates with me now. And I use that because I love that idea of stretching inside the box, because because everyone talks about outside the box and this, that, and the other, but having the ideas with inside the box and stretching the boundaries of that is just phenomenal. It's just like, oh, well, why didn't I think of that before? And why isn't anyone else thinking like this?
Right.
They should be, because it's just a really good way of using a better analogy for strategies, methodologies, and lots of other things that you can utilize. I think that's phenomenal. And I thank you for that gift back to me.
Yeah, the interesting thing is businesses actually are starting to do that now. The box is their core business, right? So what are my adjacent businesses and models that I can look on to build from my core business? So you're not way out of scope of what your company is known for, what your brand is, what your employees love to do, what they know. But if you stretch it just a little bit, looking at adjacent businesses, you're able to grow your business. Today's environment is not about status quo or static business, because eventually disruptors and disruptions will basically drive you and force you to react to it, to be agile, to iterate, and to stretch the box.
I think that's incredible. I remember you saying about the transformation of utilizing the 4-letter words in lots of different areas, and that really intrigued me as well. And I'd like you to discuss a little bit about that.
Sure. When I was doing CIO keynotes, right, one of the buzzwords in our industry is digital transformation. Yeah, and it's a very consultative buzzword where you hang a lot of money off of. It's a mystery to it. People use a lot of multi-syllabic words. They put them in run together sentences, and all they really do is generate more 4-letter words. Blah, blah, blah. You just drone on, and people just kind of roll their eyes like, what are they saying? How does that apply to my business? So I stepped back a little bit and I said, the challenge is we overcomplicate transformation, digital transformation. So the first thing is there's no such thing as digital transformation. Digital is only part of it. It's only transformation of self, team, business, all those things. So I was playing Scrabble, these little letter tiles. It's a game where you put words together, you combine those tiles to create a word. So one night I just spelled out the word transformation. Then I said, you know what? To simplify it, why don't we use only 4-letter words tied to transformation? So I was doing a little exercise and I said, okay, cost, core business, risk, time, plan, save, make, goal, all those words, 4-letter words tied to the root word transformation. And if you don't follow those 4-letter words, oops is the last one. Every business problem, every challenge that you face revolving around transformation, use the same 4-letter words. What's the cost of doing this? What's the risk? How much time do I have? What's my goal? How do I develop a plan around it? How much time do I have? I want to save. And I was chatting with the CIO. He goes, Ed, I'm looking to save money. I go, why? He goes, well, I said, anybody can save you money. They just have to drop the price.
Mhm.
I said, isn't it more important to have someone to help you make money with your investment? And he goes, oh, I said, if I can give you an 8% year-over-year return for 3 years, isn't that better than giving you a one-time discount of 12%? He goes, of course. I said, so why are we talking price? Let's talk value. So I turn my conversations into a value discussion,
Mhm.
but I tie it back to what they want to accomplish as a goal. And then I have to look at that goal and basically discuss with them, is it realistic?
Mhm.
Right? Do you have the stomach? Do you have the courage for it? Do you have the heart for it? Do you have the brain for it? That goes back to the Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everybody's on that path, that the yellow brick road of transformation. But you got to have the courage, you got to have the heart, and you got to have the brain for it. So I use a lot of metaphors, mainly because people connect with them better,
They do.
right? And I've been with professors and PhDs and the like, and sometimes they over complicate
Complicate
the
it. Yeah.
solution, and it makes it difficult for someone to connect and associate what it means to them.
Absolutely. There's been proven studies on that, on creating stories and metaphors to really sort of shortcut and make pictures in people's mind, which is the easiest way for them to understand, is go, oh yeah, I get that. I really get that. And we all paint perfect pictures in our head and videos and whatever else. And you clearly do that naturally. And I'm fascinated with how you do that. What made you learn to do that in the first place? Or were you naturally gifted with this? Or
No, it was a survival technique. So when I grew up in my neighborhood, it was predominantly black, right? And it was survive, right? And so the ability to regale them with stories was a real critical part of how to be one accepted, how to differentiate, and then how to bring value, because I was able to share and create stories that they were able to tell to others. So one of the most powerful people in the world are storytellers, number one. The power of being a storyteller is not just telling the story, timing, tone, and delivery, but the power of the story is how it's retold by someone else who heard it.
Mhm.
When the story is retold, it becomes a very powerful, emanating scenario. And that's when telling the story one time is not enough. Having it shared by others who connected with it, who basically run down the street, so you will not believe what I just heard. Right. And when that happens, that's the power of story.
Yeah, that's where the magic happens. And it's been proven that if you create a story with visuals and everything else, they remember it 75% more of the time than if you just with text and data and stuff like that. People generally don't remember that. But people like yourself that empower people with the metaphors and the stories, you've given them such a gift that they're going to remember for forever and a day. That's why I've remembered majority of your stories, which has empowered me, and I've learned from that. So what type of describe to people exactly what you do, if you can make that distinction. What you do on maybe not on a day-to-day basis. Describe who you are and what you do.
Yeah, if I were to sort of describe it, what I do is I take one of the core traits that I live by is just being always curious. And being curious, I'm always exploring. And then when I explore, I don't do it with purpose. I do it by accident. I go from one thing to another, and then I start cataloging it sort of, visually. And then once I start to, post on a mental board, all the dots, and some dots are bigger than others. Some dots are different colors.
Okay.
Some dots are closer to each other. Then I start using lines. I start connecting dots to the lines. Some lines are thicker, longer, and higher density. Then I put circles around certain collection of dots and lines, and I start seeing ecosystems.
Okay.
And then what becomes fun is visualizing all that in a conversation with someone. Someone will say, well, I do this for a living, or I do this as a business. And so help me understand the dots aligned to your business. What's the velocity? What's the density? What's your relationship? And then we start breaking it down. And to me, I feel like almost like a detective in many ways, because of the curiosity and the ability to start cataloging, identifying, and then connecting. Am I able to break down certain, let's say, insights?
Okay.
And then I share them with people, mainly because when I was doing consulting, one gentleman asked me, he goes, what's your rate, your fee? I said, what do you mean? He goes, what do you charge for a day, for an hour? I said, gee, I don't know. He goes, you don't have a rate card? I said, no, I don't. I have an impact card. He goes, what's that? I said, let's have a meeting. I'll consult to you. And after the meeting, and I go home, right? If you feel that I brought you value, write me a check. He goes, what? I said, write me a check. He goes, well, what if the check isn't enough? I said, you won't hear from me again. He goes, what if the check is too much? I said, what's too much? He goes, what do you mean? I said, if you wrote a check and you feel good about it, and because of the value that you got, there is no such thing as too much.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, oh, so long story short, I got a check.
Mm-hmm.
And he became a client, right? So there are all these things. It's perceived value, but the perceived value that I try to bring to the table is all the things that I sort of help people see differently. They see the same thing,
Mm-hmm. but
I help them see it differently. And that's the difference, right? They see technology, one box looks like the same, etc. But I help them see the value much different. One gentleman, I was chatting with his CIO, and he goes, Ed, it feels like I'm being interviewed. And I said, well, actually, I am interviewing you. And my team's there, right? And this is a high profile CIO. And he goes, so, but why are you interviewing me? I said, I need to know where to spend my time. He goes, what? I go, I bring high impact at high speed, at high quality.
Mm-hmm.
And I spend it with people who appreciate that. If you want to have a conversation with me, my team and I around price, I said, I'm not interested. Anybody can give you a price.
Yeah, of course.
There's nothing strategic about a price. And he goes, oh. I said, so if you want to have a price discussion, just go online. You'll get the price there. I said, but you're not going to get me. And he goes, I see. He goes, your card, it doesn't say sales. I said, I don't sell. He goes, you don't? I said, no. He goes, what do you do? I said, I help you buy. And he goes, what's the difference between sell and buy? I said, between 18 and 25%. And he goes, I get it. I said, isn't it better to buy something of value than to be sold something for a price?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, you're absolutely right. I said, isn't that what you do in your business? And he goes, you're right. I said, and you make boatloads of margin in your business, as I understand it. And he smiled. He goes, yeah. I said, does anybody try and ask you for a price discount? He goes, they always do. And I said, and what do you say? He goes, I bring high value. I said, there you go, like minds. So we ended up having a relationship and a business relationship, right? And I think it's that kind of candor,
mm-hmm.
that kind of a point of view is really, really important. A lot of people sort of become chameleons, and they're not true. And people smell that. They see it.
They do, yeah.
That's it. So I tell my team, I say, you walk in with a strong point of view. It's yours, right? And I want you to take a position, come hell or high water, because they're going to respect you for it. You may not get the business all the time, but that's okay. You walk in a room, you own it, right? And a lot of people lollygag just before a meeting. It's a big conference room, and a lot of big power players are coming. And I just marvel at how people don't have a sense of position. One is having the power of storytelling, the power of position. Where are you in the room when you start? Right? Are you 1 to 2 degrees away from the decision maker, or are you farther away? Right? Where are the lieutenants sitting for the power player to buffer them? What are the nuances of the body language? What are the nuances of the reactions, the tells that are happening during the meeting? All these things are happening in real time. You could be so practiced in your story. You could be so knowledgeable of what you have and even what you know of them, until that one comment, and this one came from the CTO of PepsiCo. We were chatting. And we were going to open up the one slide that says we're going to talk about technology. We're a technology company at Lenovo. Blockchain, IoT, analytics, AI. And the first comment from him was, I'm really not interested in those technologies. The whole room went quiet, like, oh my gosh, what do we do now? We had nowhere to go. We painted ourselves in the corner by talking and leading with technology.
Yeah.
And the head of worldwide sales of my team was there, and I'm going, oh my God, this is not fun. I said, all right. I said, if I were in your chair, I would have said the same thing. And he goes, oh, really? Why? I said, because there's no context to those technologies as it applies to your business. So let's see if we can build some context. Given these technologies, and you're the CTO and head of innovation at PepsiCo, a global 500 company, how does these technologies fit within the 3 houses of PepsiCo? And he goes, what are the 3 houses of PepsiCo? I said, I'm glad you asked. The 3 houses of PepsiCo's are very, very similar to how a restaurant works today. You have the front of house where people are served their dinner or their breakfast and their lunch. The back of house is the kitchen where things are made. The out of house are all the delivery drivers of the fresh foods, meat, vegetables from the farm to table, etc. He goes, I said, so if we take the front of house in PepsiCo's context, front of house are your customers who buy your product, consume your product, extol your product. Who's my best customer? Where are they my best customers? What do they buy? How often do they buy? What's my cross-sell? What's my upsell? What's my unfair share of the business against Coca-Cola? He goes, I said, how do I take the customer sentiment data and go back into the out of house to get the right types of supplies to go into my manufacturing, my packaging, my distribution, my logistics, my sales, my marketing, my planograms, my direct store delivery mechanisms? He goes, oh, wow. I said, so look at the context of the 3 houses of PepsiCo. The common denominator is data. How do I manage all of the data that traverses all of them? How do I leverage them? He goes, I like that. I said, out of the 3 houses, which one's on fire? And he goes, back of house. I said, which room? He goes, what? I said, there are multiple rooms in the back of house. Sales, marketing, logistics, packaging. And he goes, I said, think about the room on fire the way a first responder thinks. First order is safety. Second order is containment. Third order is resolution. So given those first responder parameters in the room that's on fire, which room right now do you want to address? And he goes, production line. I said, all right, let's break it down. So we went on for 45 minutes nonstop because I knew his business. I did my research. I put it in context to help him understand and share what was important to him and to talk to me in his language, not my language. This is where people get lost. People speak with the power of their language, and there's no Rosetta Stone. There's nothing that translates what I'm really good at as it applies to what they need to have done. So I always tell people, back up. Don't zoom in to the customer. Zoom out. Look at that big picture of dots, lines, circles. have him tell the story of his business, and then drive and stretch their box. If we looked at your room on fire today, as it is today, the box, how do we stretch that? And all of a sudden, things change.
They do.
The ability to help build an image, to connect, to be authentic, all those things are part of the elixir that you kind of put together. So I'm actually a frustrated alchemist, right? And behind me is my wall of vials and bottles and conversations, concepts, businesses, websites, articles. And I absorb them because I'm curious. I absorb them because when you start connecting all these different dots in different ways, you have very different conversations where you're always invited back. Right? When you're a great storyteller, you're always asked to come back. And so I always share with folks, understand the power of the story, understand who you are. One of the things I always talk about, they say, where do I start my journey? I said, it starts with yourself. In the Temple of Delphi, the oracle, Pythia, finally got tired of talking to diplomats, emperors, and generals, right? She finally said, before you come here, and she inscribed it in stone at the Temple of Delphi, know thyself. Who are you? Start there. That center that drives the authenticity that people want and people resonate with. And this is the challenge. People put on these veneers.
They do, yeah.
And it doesn't work. And you, inside yourself, it doesn't work, but you feel you have to. Don't do that. Right? When I walk in a room, I don't apologize for my background at all. As a matter of fact, I wear all these ribbons because these are all scar tissue. Right? And people, they go like, what was that? I said, that was the Battle of Verdun. Let me tell you that, right? That was a lot of fun. And then I said, what was this? I said, this is when I chatted with PepsiCo. And then when you regale them with that, right, your clients lean forward, right? And they're going to share stories back that they would never share with anyone else. And so the connecting with people emotionally, etc., that only happens when you know yourself, when you're authentic, and you share a strong point of view.
And that does take a little bit of practice to do in a certain point of view, because I know when I first started out, you had this persona, I'm this sort of person, but it's only, as you say, once you get the scar tissues and once you have the battle wounds, then you can actually just come out and be yourself. And I think that's the best piece of advice that you can give the world right now, is just be yourself. Forget about the persona, forget about this and the other. Obviously, you have to be professional with it as well, but it's sharing your ideas and sharing the concepts and just saying, look, I have been through the war and I have had this, that, and the other, but so what? Yeah. Because everyone has those war wounds there in the background.
And you should wear them with pride, right? And it's funny, in this industry, it's filled with all sorts of which college did you go to? What kind of degrees do you have? And I just kind of marvel at it. I'm like, and what's that got to do with business?
Absolutely. And again, I saw you, we discussed beforehand, I saw you presenting on video with some academias I think at Stanford University. And the other guys were excellent, but they were very academic and they're experts in their field. But you sort of shone out of all three of them or four of them or however many there were, because you simplified everything and you came across like the real deal. And that proved to me you have to have those scar tissues along the way so you can come across in the authentic, real manner, as opposed to the academic manner and reading lots of books, which is fantastic as well. But
and I never discount that. I love it. I think someone who's accomplished and driven and has achieved those levels are phenomenal. Yeah. Now add to it, right? When you add all these other elements, it just makes a world of difference. And to me, when I build teams, I have 8 startups under my belt, right? When I build teams, I always hire people I want to work for. right? And there's a huge difference. And I build teams that are complementary to each other. This one woman came in and she had, it was a business development job on my team, and her name was Maria, and she goes, I have come from the World Bank, but I don't have any business development. I said, Maria, I don't really care what you don't have. I care about what you do have. So tell you what, why don't you tell me what you did last summer? She goes, okay. I was in Nicaragua. I said, doing what? She goes, well, we were organizing against the Sandinistas, a terrorist group. I'm going, what? You're doing what? She goes, yeah. I said, explain it. She explained it to me in a 10-minute story. I said, okay. I said, the interview's over. She goes, oh? I said, you're hired. She goes, what? I said, you're in. She goes, but I don't I said, Maria, I can teach you business development. That's not hard. I said, but I can't teach fearless. You are fearless. I said, I want you to come on my team and teach us how to be fearless. She goes, I can do that. And the ability of a leader to recognize people for the potential that they have and can become,
Mm-hmm.
that is really one of the goals and one of the visions that I have, right? Is to identify people, give them the opportunity to find themselves,
Absolutely.
to hone themselves, to grow themselves, right? Without fear of failure. And that when you give people that kind of parameter, they excel way beyond expectation. Because people who build, let's say, frameworks and limits and expectations and titles, all of that builds constraints, all of it. And expectations of those constraints are actually down.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is I give them a high sort of set of goals and the freedom to make the call in real time. Because the moment of truth is impulse. What is the first thing you feel that you need to say, do, or act on? Your true self shows at that moment of truth, right? You can practice all day long.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. When the moment of truth comes, how do you respond? Right? And this is what I look for. I look for people who know and can build that through confidence and experience, right? To learn from failures, that they can continue to keep moving forward. So last story is that I left a startup and a friend of mine goes, Ed, what was it like? I said, it was like 3 guys in a foxhole in the middle of a battle. He goes, what is that? I said, first guy in the foxhole's on his haunches, hugging his knees, wrapping his arms around his knees and rocking back and forth, muttering to himself. I said, he's not going anywhere. He goes, yeah. He goes, what's the second guy? I said, second guy takes a rifle, locks and loads, and says, when the whistle blows, I'm jumping out of the foxhole.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, huh. And he goes, huh, okay. Where's the third guy? I said, 30 yards out, yelling on me. He goes, you're that guy. I said, I'm that guy. I said, my job is to be out of the foxhole. My job is to instill the energy, the confidence, and the willingness of that second guy to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't look back. Right? If I do my job right, I never look back. And he goes, wow. What about the third guy? I said, he's not going to make it. He opted out mentally and physically. There will be people who will opt out. We cannot save them all. Right? So I said, this is really sort of a very interesting set of dynamics. I said, so if there's one military book I'll mention, there's a research document for DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Planning Agency for the United States. It's military research. And they're the ones who did ARPANET or the internet. Al Gore thinks he invented it. He didn't. It was DARPA. Yep. So there's some fascinating things about DARPA. But they actually came up with a doctrine, and it was called the Mosaic Warfare Doctrine. What I did was I read that, I devoured it. And the thing around it is that their doctrine is no different than an enterprise business doctrine. Mm-hmm. It is about empowering the edge. It's enabling speed. It's the ability to sense, decide, and act in real time. So what I try to do now is use these metaphors of how the military looks at it and put it in the context of business. And then the whole critical thing is that when you're at the edge, there are two key principles that are critical. First one at the edge is E3. You have to be able to engage, empower, and educate wherever you are. The counter to that is A3. You have to assess, adapt, and act. And when you take the E3 and the A3, engage, empower, and educate, and you blend that and complement that with assess, adapt, and act, you now have a very interesting loop of continuous interaction with something and someone, somewhere. And that becomes the power of your ability to then be a storyteller, to understand the situation, have a strong point of view, and off you go.
Wow. I love the way you give people back trust and also give them the respect that they need and the creativity that they need when they're out there in the field and they're actively engaging with businesses, to give them the trust that they can go out and they can do what they need to do to engage with businesses in a more authentic way and serve them and give them value back, because that's what's needed in there. And strategic thinking like that is hugely empowering. So your team must be massively empowered. And I love the way that you use the word I work for. So you work for them as opposed to the other way around. I love that. That's a really clever way of making them be empowered by that, and that's just really good. There's a book in there, and I know there's a book in there. And Ed, I've said this to you before, and I'll say it to you again. All of this stuff that you're saying needs to be written down, because you have a really high level strategy there, which thousands and thousands of people can learn. And I've heard parts of it by reading other books, stuff, but this has all come from you. So I'm totally, I've always been very sort of happy to speak to you, because I learn every time. And I know that thousands of other people can learn from your curious brain and how you see the world from a slightly different angle. And I was thinking of the Matrix when you were speaking earlier and taking the dots from that. The question that I want to ask is, so what life lessons do you find helpful and invaluable to empower other people?
Yeah, the life lesson is, in a lot of our societies, right? It's about attaining and retaining power. My life lesson is power is not meant to be kept. Power is meant to be given.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, is a core principle, right? The more I'm able to give my power, the power of storytelling, the power of enablement, et cetera, right? The more it allows people to find their own. And to me, that's sort of like my charter, right? It's the way I see myself. I mean, someone asked me, said, what do you want to be? I said, I just want to be a teacher, right? And just go about sharing ideas and stories and helping people see the power of themselves, define themselves at the Temple of Delphi.
Mm-hmm.
They know themselves. They find themselves. They say, okay, this is who I am. This is my essence. This is what I stand for. No matter what happens around the world, no matter what condition I walk in, this is who I am. People resonate with that. They sense it. And when they do, the power begins.
Mm-hmm.
And that power is inside. But the thing is to share it. Because when you share and give away the power, it allows you to add new things. Because people use the power to hold on because they're known for it, right? People rely on, I don't want anybody to rely on me at all, right? I'll be there, here and there, and I'll pop up out of nowhere all of a sudden, right? They say, Ed, I'm like, oh, I'm here. What do you need? They said, okay. I said, here, I want you to look at these three things. Come up with your best solution. They go like, that one. I said, good. See you. Bye. Right? And they go like, that's it. I go, poof, I'm gone. See ya. Because I don't want them to keep looking for approval.
Mm-hmm.
that because when people live on people coming back, for you to approve, that's power. I don't want that.
Yeah.
Right. So give away your power. That's the only way to gain more insight, more knowledge, to be curious about other things. And when you do, you're able to share that with someone else again and again and again. And the ability to kind of repeat this over. So I think one of your questions was, if I had a superpower, what would it be? My superpower would be to replicate myself 100 times in 100 different places, in 100 different areas, right? And to just propagate this kind of approach. Because then once it starts, it goes, it get bigger, because all of the people who are affected by it, they're going to share it with someone else. And that's my only, how would I say this, price. They said, well, what do you charge? I said, my ask is that you share this with someone else and you do not charge for it. They go like, what? I go, do not do that. You give away the true essence. You lose the essence of what this power is. And when you do that, it goes nowhere. You lose value. When you put price on something, that you lose it. Don't put a price. When you do that, you're going to find the magic of it, right? And every year, every holiday season, I write after Thanksgiving, which is the end of November. I write, and my goal is by the 24th of December, about 30 days, I write about 4,000 personal emails to all of my network.
And you do, and I received them. Thank you so much for that. And it's such a great gift, because I remember receiving it last year and I go, wow, that's really good. I love that. And it comes around, I get mine around about Christmas time, and it always brings a big smile on my face, because it's a personal note. And I know you've written it and you spent so much time and effort by doing that. It's something that I should be doing a lot more. I usually contain it to a very small number, but from now on, that's my task. I'm going to be doing that, because I think that's hugely empowering to do that. And it's a personal note. And I love that. You've done a wonderful thing there.
And it helps. There are a lot of challenging times in our society and in business. I'm always reaching out and say, how are you? How's family? Is there anything I can do for you? Right. And there are no expectations whatsoever, because someone did it for me. So that's sort of the personal philosophy that I have, and it served me well. It fits me. And to me, that I wake up every day with hair on fire, right? High energy. I love what I do, and I love who I interact with all the time.
That's absolutely wonderful. Look, Ed, I'm absolutely delighted that we've had this conversation today, and you've given so much back, as I've said before. But what I'd love you to do at some stage, I'm going to keep reminding you every time I speak to you, please write it down, and please get someone to ghostwrite with you, and then put it back into a story, whatever it might be, because I think it would be a #1 bestseller, and I think it would be like a new Simon Sinek or something like that. I think it's hugely empowering, because you come up with some wonderful ideas, and I think that's worthy of a read along the line. So
we'll make it an audiobook. I've actually had offers from publishers to write a book, and I said, look, I don't want to write that. I'll just dictate. You ghostwrite it for me. But I've had 3 offers so far. I'll seriously consider it.
I would absolutely do that. If you have a goal that you need to activate, that'd be one of them to do. So time yourself for a year or so. If not, I'll remind you. I'll send you a text and say, Ed, where is this book? I know it's a big ask, but I think you need to definitely put that down. And I said that when I first met you, and I'm still saying it now. So you've got some wonderful stories and anecdotes in there that need to be told. And your strategic thinking needs to be shared so other people can learn it. As I say, that's your superpower. And if you can give a superpower out, is to write it down and share that knowledge, because I think it's wonderful.
Well, I appreciate that, Jason. Thanks so much.
And thank you so much for spending so much of your precious time today on this. And we shall share this among the masses, and let's share the knowledge as well. So appreciate that. Thanks a lot again.
You're welcome, and my pleasure. Take care.